Good morning. It is 8:59 a.m. right now on a Tuesday morning, and I'm doing something that we do every day. And I've been thinking about as I, write in these journals, I realized what a creature of habit we all are. I actually wrote an email a while ago about we're all kind of living this Groundhog Day where we have a very similar intersecting life with all the people that are around us as well. Like right over my shoulder, there's a couple that's sitting here that comes every morning. It's a father or a mother and a son. And I just love like consistency. I realized as I looked at all of these journals now, 30 plus years of journals, I looked at them all. We've got them all stacked up in my dining room. And there's probably 150 journals of, a daily ritual, daily habit of writing in my journal. And as I'm going through this, I'm in journal number 1 right now, and I'm starting to realize the importance of and the value of the growing wake of intellectual property. That's a fancy word, but of things that I've created over all of these years. Like, so this is 1996 in journal number 1. And if I think about everything, the thing that got me out of the day to day of being a real estate agent, making cold calls, and working in my business is reading Michael Gerber's book, The E-Myth, and I learned the concept of working on your business and creating things that are going to have value and utility beyond what you're doing. And, I realized that making cold calls is a very useful thing and effective in that it works, but it's a very immediate payoff with not much future. There's no value in it in terms of residual value. It's the effort that you're getting, that's creating the result. And as soon as you stop doing it, it stops creating the result. And when I really got that on a deep level, I started realizing that putting things into a format that I could use again and again and again was the most valuable thing that I could do. And that's when I immediately went to create the guide to Halton Hills that became, because I followed Michael Gerber's plan of treating it like something I was going to duplicate 5,000 times. So I had that whole intention and creating a duplicatable system out of these, the guides and the ads and all the assets that you would need to run this successfully in Halton Hills. I was able to license to 40 different people all around Toronto. And then that was what got me into the relationship with Joe Stump. And now here we are traveling around the country teaching this same idea and creating assets for realtors that are sort of one to many. You do it one time, and many, many people are able to use the things. So I was laughing because I'm looking in here and I realized one of the sort of major projects that I was working on in this journal at this point in time was something that I was calling the Homebuyer College. And it was a series of newsletters and education pieces that we could mail to people who were not ready to buy a home right now, but we're going to buy a home in the next 12 months, 24 months. We started out. So I was creating all of these, I was brainstorming all the things that we could send to people. So the first 12 are on are in this journal, which, this got very expanded and became, we had created 26 issues of this now that we still use to this day, except instead of being delivered as mail in an envelope, they're delivered as emails in a follow-up sequence. So to be able to give somebody a plug and play system that we use, this became the foundation of the follow up of what would become money making websites. And all again, this is 1996, before the internet. And so it started this journey of gathering all of this intellectual property that has value still 30 years later. Like if I think about some of the topics, like the first one was on credit and how it affects your ability to buy a home, how to repair your credit, consolidation loans, all of the things that you might want to know about that. The second one was about down payments. And the one thing that I used to spend a lot of time in these journals is coming up with headline ideas. And Eben Pagan and I would be like, we were crazy about headlines. I mean, our greatest joy was to get the latest issue of Cosmo magazine. If you remember Cosmo at the grocery store, the women's magazine, and they had the most amazing headlines on the covers. And we would take those formulas and we would adapt them to many different things. So the idea of getting really good at buying headline or creating headlines was an amazing skill. So one of them, the down payment headline, was why saving for a down payment doesn't work and what to do about it. And so we started coming up with all of this outline for this IP, and I realized, man, that has become an amazing thing, and one of the very first real valuable pieces of IP that I created. The 6 dumbest legal mistakes smart people make when buying a home. All, adapted from the pages of Cosmo magazine and the National Enquirer and Weekly World News and Women's Home Journal. And at the time in the 90s, if you got on a good mailing list, there would be constantly something called magalogs that would be getting sent to your house. I've got a whole tickle trunk full of all of these kind of magalogs, and I'll show you some of these as we move forward. But that alone, just this idea of, if I could take one encouragement for you, is to think now about packaging and documenting all the things that you know. Put it into something that somebody else could use. It's it's deeply satisfying when you see other people having success with something that you created. It was really interesting because I'm looking through here, and I was in the very beginning, I was working with some of the very most successful realtors in Canada at the time of creating this. And there was a young guy called Brad Lamb. If you're in Toronto, you of course know who Brad Lamb is, but he was young like me at the time, just kind of getting started, but he had a focus 100% on condos. And we did a condo guide with Brad Lamb using this Toronto and Beyond model, and ran little classified ads in the Globe and Mail, which was the big newspaper there. And I remember, him and I talking about how exciting it was the first time people started calling to ask for the condo guide, which was literally like people saying, hey, I'm interested in buying a condo. And so exciting stuff to think all the way through that, you know? Started thinking now, like, I think the ongoing stuff like that. Today, my Dan Kennedy newsletter arrived, which I always look forward to, and I realized, listen, I've been a uninterrupted subscriber to the Dan Kennedy newsletter since I discovered him in the early 90s. And you think about the consistency and the value of this collection of intellectual property that he has put out, 16 pages a month for, 35 years at least that I've been subscribed. And then something else that arrived in my mail today, I've been subscribing to these, if you're on Instagram or you're on Facebook, you probably start to see these letters by mail subscriptions. And you see how it's funny to see the pendulum swing from, in 1996, there's no internet, and email was like so rare that AOL made a sound every time you got one. You've got mail. And it was such an event that quickly went away. But we've all now come full circle to where we love to get physical things in the mail. And there's lots of different services, lots of different subscriptions that you can use to, or get, that once a month send you send you an interesting mailing. And I thought this is what the Homebuyer College was when I first created it. The idea was to have a monthly mailer that we could send to everybody that requested one of the guides until they were ready to buy their home. So I'm having fun going through these journals, and I think that's the big lesson for today, is to, how valuable the intellectual property is. And as we continue to go through these, we're going to see more and more and more of this building snowball effect of every piece of intellectual property that I create building on top of each other, all the way to here we are 30 years later, and they're still being used in creating value in the world. So there we go. This is Dean Jackson reporting live from Winter Haven, looking through 30 years of journals. Take a look at all the videos. We're going to make our way through all of them, and hopefully it'll take less than 30 years for us to get through them. But we're having fun.